So I just bought every single Game of Thrones book, and I'm going to try to read them all in a month. We'll see how this goes. So I'm actually pretty familiar with Game of Thrones. I've watched the whole series and I've watched House of the Dragon. The first time I watched Game of Thrones, I actually thought it was phenomenal all the way through. But the second time I watched it, I really noticed those later seasons got pretty bad. I wanted to revisit the whole series, but I wanted to do it straight from the author. And hopefully I can be ready when the new book comes out in about 5 or 6 years. Or 10. And I've obviously heard that the book is way better than the show. And I'm pretty obsessed with the show. So the first book I'm going to start is not Game of Thrones. It's actually Fire and Blood. And I've already started on it. I've read all the way up to where King Jaehaerys was pretty much stabilized the realm, so I'm curious to see what more comes out of this. Okay, so I figured I'd go over this for those of you who don't know. So, Fire and Blood is a Westeros history novel. It's like about the Targaryen history and all that. Then you have Game of Thrones, which is the blue book here. This is the first book, and I think this covers like season 1. And then you've got Clash of Kings, which is the second book. I think this is season 2. I don't really know, honestly, which one covers what in the book, or the show. And then Storm of Swords, this is book 3. And then you've got A Feast for Crows, which from what I've heard is part 1 of A Dance of Dragons, but they split it up into 2. And then you've got A Dance of Dragons, which is the last one. And apparently these all came out like various years between each other, but the last book, this book came out in 2013, and there hasn't been a new one in like since. So yeah, let's get into it. Okay, so to read every single Game of Thrones book plus Fire and Blood in a month, according to ChatGPT, you need to read like 3 hours a day and 165 pages. So I got a lot of work to do every single day for a month. All right. Okay, so to catch you guys up on where I am, I read the whole part with Aegon the Conqueror, his son King Aenys, his downfall, King Maegor the Cruel, and all the awful things he did, and now I'm at King Jaehaerys, and pretty much King Jaehaerys has just returned to King's Landing after studying a Dragonstone and training a Dragonstone all his life, and a couple other things have happened with Rhaegar Baratheon, but it's honestly, this part is so cool because King Jaehaerys has been training on Dragonstone. He comes back to King's Landing, he's badass, he's more manly, he's bigger, taller. He has his dragon Vermithor, and honestly, this part's just so cool. It's like cool to see an actual proper king of Westeros and someone who actually cares about being a good king and doing more than just being strong and all that stuff. So this part is honestly really cool, and I can even see them making a whole series about this. But yeah, let me keep going. Good morning, guys. So it is pretty early, but I'm going to get to reading, and I also kind of realized that yesterday I forgot to show you guys the date and the time to show you that I'm going to try to do this in like a month. So it is August 8th. Yesterday I filmed pretty much all that yesterday, August 7th. So let's get to it. Let's get to reading. Alright guys, so I have a long drive ahead of me for work, so it's about 2.5 hours. Now obviously I can't drive and read at the same time, but I can get the audiobook. So I found some videos on YouTube with the free audiobook. I'll link them down below. This guy's actually pretty great. He like voice acts each person and all that, so I'll leave it down below if you guys want to check it out, and hopefully this will give me a good ways through the book. So let's do this.
It marked the first time the Admiralty had gone to any man not of House Valerian. All King's Landing rejoiced when it was From there, he and his retinue moved on to Riverrun, Acorn Hall, Pink Maiden,
Okay, so Alyssa Farman just took 3 dragon eggs from Rhaena Targaryen's Dreamfire and ran off to Pentos and Bravos to sell them and get a ship. Now, I watched plenty of videos on YouTube about kind of where Daenerys' dragon eggs came from, but having read all the way up to this point in the book so far, it really does seem like that's probably, you know, almost confirmed like what, you know, Daenerys' dragon eggs are, or where they came from, which is super cool. I mean, honestly. So, yeah. Okay, so it's the same day. I'm heading back. It's another 2-hour drive, so I'm listening to more Fire and Blood. And I'm at the part where Arya Targaryen just got back to the Red Keep after being missing for a certain amount of time with Balerion, the Black Dread. And it's crazy because she comes back sick and with like worms inside her, like he describes it as snakes with faces on them. And you know, just how disgusting she was. Like when she came back, like she was skinny, had no flesh on her bones, and the worms inside her, all this stuff. It was just crazy. So really interesting. Want to know where the hell she went and where Balerion took her. Super interesting. So I just kind of want to talk about that. That was crazy. I did not even know about that. And yeah, just crazy. So anyways.
The rest remained at Winterfell. Her first sight of the wall from above took Alysanne's breath away, Her Grace would tell the king.
Alright guys, so it's August 11th at 7 p.m. and I am almost done with Fire and Blood. There I am. I just finished the Dance of the Dragons and pretty much everything that House of the Dragon show will be covering. In the end of it, the fights get crazy. The battle for Harrenhal is... Alright guys, I just finished Fire and Blood. I'm like a day late on when I wanted to finish it. I wanted to finish it yesterday, but I had some things come up. If you want my reaction to it, here it is. Wow. Just wow. Okay, but seriously, there's like 150 years of Targaryen history that's not explored here. Like the Blackfire Rebellions and all that. So I guess we're getting a Fire and Blood too? I don't know. Okay, so now it's time to start the main series. Let's get to it. Okay, so I'm a little over 100 pages in, and since I'm a show watcher, I wanted to note out some things that are different in the book than the show. So for one, all the characters are much younger and described to look very differently. Jon and Robb are 14 and 15 years old. Dany is only 13, which makes the whole Khal Drogo thing just more uncomfortable than it was in the show. You can also tell that Mr. Barton really fleshed out this universe before even starting this book. Like Jon and the other characters talk about things early on in the Targaryen history, like Daeron's invasion of Dorne, Sir Eric and Arik from the Dance of the Dragons and the House of the Dragon show, and Baelor the Blessed, and more. Catelyn Stark is also so much more mean, like damn, she's really mean to Jon. And Bran is in way worse condition than the show. I mean, described as being like brittle and tiny and his legs are all twisted up and messed up. The show, he was not that bad. Okay, so I guess Ned doesn't fight Jaime when Jaime confronts him in King's Landing after he goes to that brothel. And instead of a spear stabbing him in the leg like in the show, his horse falls on him. So I thought that was a bit different. I kind of preferred it in the show because it made Ned seem more badass that he stood up to Jaime and, you know, had a duel with him and survived. But yeah, so small change. So I'm on page 524. Jon and Sam just did their vows to the Night's Watch, and Arya and Sansa are packing their stuff to head back to Winterfell. So that's that's as much as I'm doing tonight, so get back to this tomorrow. Fuck. Does anyone else miss Serial Pharrell as much as I do? Damn, that dude was dope. Damn, takes out a bunch of knights in armor with a wooden sword. I mean, come on. The dude is sick. Okay, so I'm about 50 pages away from finishing the first book, and I just wanted to show you guys how destroyed it gets, just from reading it. Like, I mean, I know I threw it once or twice for that one scene in the video, but I really haven't done anything else, and this book just gets completely destroyed just by reading it. It's mass market for you. Okay guys, so as you can see, it is August 22nd, and I just finished the first Game of Thrones book. I finished it a little bit later than I wanted to. I wanted to finish like 2 days ago, but this is a beefy book, and the books actually only get bigger from here. So this challenge is going to be a lot harder than I thought. And yeah, so that book was honestly incredible. There was some changes from the show, but honestly, season 1 stays pretty true to the show, obviously minus some things that I noted, and there's some other things too. But now let's get on to A Clash of Kings. Oh, hey buddy, how you doing? Hey. Okay, so I just want to show you guys, these mass market books are hot garbage. Look at this. Oh, let me see. So I mean, the pages were just falling out as I'm reading it. Look at that. Hey, does anyone want to buy the prologue of A Clash of Kings for me? I have it here. It's like a little sneak peek, like a chapter in a manga. See? It's perfect. Okay, guys. So, a little update. Let me fix this. A little update on my reading. So the last clip was actually a couple of days ago. I have not been doing too good on my reading over this past weekend. I kind of had a 3-4 day weekend because I was off from work and stuff. So I'm at page 163. I just finished a Davos chapter. He's with Stannis the Manus and Melisandre, and he is just kind of preparing to get things started and attack King's Landing and all that stuff. So yeah, I need to read a lot more and a lot faster if I want to get through all these books in a month. I kind of didn't realize how beefy these books are, and even if you ever watched the show like I have twice and know quite a bit about the show, it's still like, you almost still want to read through things like twice sometimes because it's very nuanced, and there's things that are happening that you almost don't even pick up right away. So it's a beefy book, and it's there's a lot of details and stuff. So I need to get to reading. Luckily today, though, I do have the day off. So I've taken the day off to pack for a trip that I have later this week that I was hoping to get to A Storm of Swords by then. I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, I still have like 900 pages to read of this book. So I'm really going to try to slam through a lot. And even when I work out later, I'm going to do the audiobook. So let's go.
Chapter 21. Bran.
Alright, so after a bit of reading, I decided to take a break and pop into Barnes & Nobles. I want to come in here because I want to check out the different editions of the Game of Thrones books. Because honestly, these mass market editions are so flimsy and the text is so small. But I ended up deciding that I'll just finish the mass market editions because, I mean, I have them already and I've gotten through a book and a half basically already, so it is what it is. I also checked out some other series that I want to get into and I've heard great things about. Who knows, maybe I'll read these next. Alright, so I got some reading to do, so I'm going to put some badass music behind it just so it's not boring. Okay, so I am about halfway through A Clash of Kings, and I am thoroughly enjoying it. It is really, really good. Something I failed to kind of mention in the last book was that, these books are structured differently than the show. In the books, you follow each character's perspective, so you kind of get to sit. You're essentially, instead of the show, you are watching each character do things, and in the books, you are the characters. So you're kind of, you're hearing their thoughts, and you're kind of understanding more of what they're feeling and behind the words that they're saying. And I kind of mainly mean that in the sense of is Theon kind of going to his family, back to his family, and recruiting them for help. Obviously, we know how that turns out, but you kind of get to hear Theon's thoughts and see why he kind of is making these decisions that he's making. Whereas in the show, you're kind of just seeing them happen, and you can kind of understand it also in the show why Theon's doing it a little bit. But definitely in the book, it expands more on that, which I like a lot. And another thing I want to mention that I actually kind of preferred in the show is that Arya, when she gets to Harrenhal, first off, her expedition with Yoren and the Night's Watch is quite a bit more extensive in the book before Yoren gets dismissed. But when she gets to Harrenhal, she is actually Roose Bolton's servant and not Tywin Lannister's, which I kind of preferred in the show. I mean, Tywin and her dynamic in the show was just, it was awesome. It was definitely my favorite part of season 2. But yeah, she doesn't really have that same dynamic with Roose Bolton, and it seems like the scenes with Jack and Hagar and her whispering to him and helping and getting his help to to assassinate people and all that is a lot, there's a lot more of that going on. And obviously, since like I said, you're in the POV of these characters and Arya Stark herself, you're just getting a lot more of what she's thinking and her frustration with things and her being scared and all these things. So it's really interesting. I do like it, but I'm not gonna lie, I think, at least so far, I kind of prefer the show on that part, but that's just me. Okay, so something I want to mention too, guys, I have been reading the audiobook a little bit because I think the audiobook really helps you kind of, detail the landscapes in your mind. Also, the person that I'm listening to every now and then is on YouTube. I'll link him down below again, but he does voice acts for each character, and I think that just really helps kind of, especially for the Essos characters. There's a few characters who are from the narrow sea and are from the free cities and all that, and he gives them accents and stuff like that, and it just really helps change things up. And then when I read it on my own, I end up giving them accents too, and especially Varys. In my head, Varys has this deep, thick accent, and I just think it really helps a lot. So I wanted to mention that. I really highly recommend you guys read the audiobook, depending on where you get it from. I don't know if everyone who narrates it does a voice acts each character. But I highly recommend doing it. I think it'll just really help your reading, and you kind of, depict the world or visualize it in a better way. So yeah. Okay, so tomorrow I fly out to Utah for about a week, and I'm trying to finish this book as fast as possible. However, finishing A Clash of Kings is tougher than I thought. This book is huge, and I'm starting to experience reading fatigue. I don't know about you guys, but this is a lot of reading for me. But I'm approaching page 800. I'm going to read a little bit more tonight and then listen to the audiobook on the plane there. All right, so let's hop on this plane. It's a bread on the plate, she a eater. Need some bread on the plate for the feature. I'm a beast, little boy, I'm a creature. Ain't no money to make. So on the plane, I finished listening to A Clash of Kings, and I gotta say, the battle for Blackwater is way better in the book. I love how Tyrion utilized this giant chain to throw across the river and trap Stannis' fleet. I think overall, while I like The Clash of Kings, I think the first book is better. But let's move on to A Storm of Swords. Okay, so on this trip, I did a lot of reading. I must have read over 100 pages a day probably, but it only took me about a quarter of the way through for Storm of Swords to be probably my favorite book so far. Obviously, by this point in the series, a lot is happening, but I want to talk about a few things that I wrote down here. So in the beginning of the book, Arya has a dream where she's a wolf, kind of like how Bran does, and I'm not sure if this is her warging on her own, because I know in the TV show she's not able to do that, but I'm not sure if in the book she is. So that was honestly really cool and kind of was a good little teaser, I think, of what's to come. There's also another set of Eric and Ark twins, which I don't think that was in the show either. And something that blew my mind was a discussion between Mance Rayder and Jon. Mance explains that he was able to sneak into Winterfell in the beginning of the series and watch the whole feast between the Lannisters and the Starks. I thought this was such a cool revelation, and I do not remember this from the show. So correct me down below if I'm wrong. Another major difference I noticed was Rob gets married to an entirely different woman than this girl that was in the show. In the book, he gets married to this girl, Jane Westerling, and there's really like no build up to it. He just kind of shows up to Catelyn's like, hey, here's my wife. So I thought that was kind of strange. The scenes up north are so much more badass in the book. And like I mentioned before, every chapter is a POV chapter. So you get to be inside Sam's head as he's freaking out while things are going on. And at one point, one of his ranger buddies gets mauled by an undead bear with blue eyes and everything. I thought that was so cool. Jamie and Brienne are traveling down south to King's Landing, and it's kind of the same as the show, except different people pick them up. In the show, I think the Northerners and people who are kind of allied with the Starks pick them up, but in here, it's like the Dothraki and the Dornishmen, which, by the way, how are there Dothraki in the Seven Kingdoms? Can someone answer that for me? Dany's story is pretty similar to the show. She's getting the whole Unsullied army and going through that thing. But so far, I'm really enjoying A Storm of Swords, and I can't wait to see how much more the story veers off, because I'm starting to see that butterfly effect kind of set in. Alright guys, so I failed the challenge. It's a little over a month since I started this whole video and this whole challenge, and I'm only at page 947 of A Storm of Swords. I tried to do it. It was tough. Yeah, these books are huge and they're very detailed, so I honestly underestimated this challenge. I mean, I know I did read Fire and Blood first, so I guess I'd be at A Feast for Crows if I didn't read that, but still, this challenge was hard. Hey, is anybody in the club of not knowing that Catelyn Stark gets raised from the dead? Like, what? This book and season 3 of the show have so much happening. And honestly, now that I think about it, season 3 of the show is probably my favorite. I mean, you got Jon Snow and the Night's Watch Beyond the Wall, Tywin and Tyrion in King's Landing, Brienne and Jaime traveling through the Riverlands, Arya and Gendry's friendship, Robb and Catelyn and everything going on there, and you can't forget about that ending that I just mentioned. I'm not gonna lie, I'm super interested to see what happens in the next book because, man, that ending, wow, that's big. Oh, and rest in peace, Robb Stark. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you liked it. I'm sorry I didn't get through the whole challenge, but hey, if you like this video, drop a thumbs up down below, and what I'll do is I will read these 2 books in another video, and yeah, we can talk about them. So comment below anything to add to this, and let's start a discussion.